Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Human Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're taking a look at something that was just a little bit of fun. It's a game between the GMs of the London Classic and Table 18 at the closing dinner. So every year when the London Classic is held, there's a lovely final dinner, and one of the really nice things about the dinner is that a simultaneous is played, and every table has a chessboard, and the GMs playing in the London Classic, they take it in turns to come around and make moves. Strength of the tables is normally not bad. This time I was on table 18 and was together with Natasha Regan, Women's International Master, of course, and co-author of Game Changer, as I'm sure you all know. Also Raymond Keane and Felix McPeak, who's pretty good chess player and a very strong shogi player. Also Natasha's son, Oscar, who's not very high rated, but a very good player as well. And also Henry Mutkin from the RAC Club. Those are the main people who sort of took part in suggesting moves. And yeah, I mean, you're playing against some very strong grandmasters, but I've noticed it every single year that having the grandmasters pretty disconnected from the moves that have been played before, so they're just coming around maybe once every 7 or 8 moves to your table, and it's different grandmasters each time. Then yeah, it really does reduce their playing strength. I mean, one year was absolutely hilarious, where one somewhat lower rated participant was making moves, and then Vichy was coming along and putting them all back. So yeah, very can be very tough for the grandmasters, and in general the guests make a pretty good score. So this is the game that we played, which was pretty fun. So I just thought it was worth sharing. It's a special extra little Christmas treat. It's also I think the first pieces I've moved over the board since COVID or something. So also quite fun to do. So let's have a look. How did the game start? So e4 and now c6. So this was a suggestion, a demand actually, of Natasha's son Oscar, who very keen on the Caro-Kann. I was looking maybe for a Dragon Sicilian or something like that, but Caro-Kann it was. So d4, d5, and now e5. And the Polish Grandmaster Bartel was coming around quite a lot, and so he was making the initial moves and seemed to know his stuff. So that was a little bit worrying. This is the short system. Now we have various ideas. I mean, you can play moves like knight e7, knight d7. There's all sorts of ways of playing. I think we even had bishop b4 check, I think, in the super final one time. But yeah, I mean, one of the main moves really is to play the move c5, just striking back immediately at the centre, and that's the one we decided to play. I was a little bit nervous about it because, well, I have actually studied the Caro-Kann in quite a bit of depth in my time, but yeah, I'm not sure how great my recollection is of all the theory somehow. But anyway, that's what we went for, and that's what we did. So yeah, I mean, this line of the Caro-Kann is quite interesting somehow. I mean, in principle, black's doing quite nicely, you would have thought, because you've got the French pawn chain, f7, e6, d5, and you've got your bishop outside it. So in principle, that should be good. But of course, in order to achieve that, black has wasted a move, played c6 and c5, and well, somehow, the fact that the bishop is outside the pawn chain, it means that it's quite easy to attack. It does get hits with kingside pawn advances, and also with knight moves as well. And if white gets the bishop, then that's advantage of the 2 bishops for white. So and yeah, that was sort of Nigel's realization that yeah, putting the bishop outside the pawn chain was not completely clear. The other thing as well is that when the bishop is behind the pawn chain, a little bit of the idea, like in the King's Indian, that if white opens the centre, then the bishop gets active. So you get a big increase in activity. In this position, with the bishop already outside the pawn chain, you can start attacking the black centre, and there's no increase in activity of the light squared bishop. And yeah, in some sort of weird way, that that seems to make a difference somehow. I mean, in general terms, the short variation of the advance is still pretty popular. Still, seem to be a major system. So after bishop e3, a couple of the table wanted queen b6. This is really, really sharp, and to be honest, I can't remember anything about that. So we went for the line that I could remember something about, which is to take on d4, knight takes d4, and now knight e7. So yeah, I mean, actually, you're seeing already, right, that a natural move like knight takes d4, and because the bishop's been developed, is getting hit. But in this particular position, black's not too worried about it. I mean, knight f5 gains the tempo by attacking the bishop on e3. So that's not too bad at all. I mean, the only thing, of course, about this method of development for black is that it's a little bit gummed up. Always is in the advanced variation of the Caro-Kann. Because the black knight can't get to f6. You either have to try and move the bishop out first, which isn't too easy, and then move the knight along, or you have to move the knight a couple of times, and then bring the bishop out. So always a little bit tricky. But with knight e7, black's looking to play knight c6 and then knight takes d4, and then afterwards get the knight out and develop. That would be the ideal. Another idea could be to maybe move the bishop away and then move the knight away as well. So here, I seem to remember that it was Nikita Vityugov, the new English #1, who played castles in this position, which surprised me somehow because, I mean, the white players have been trying all sorts of interesting things here. Knight d2 has been very common. It's Dragon's first reaction after being given position after black's 7th move here. So the idea is knight bc6, we go knight f3, and we just keep that pressure. So if knight d4, and then if you went knight c6, I could take on f5, double up your pawns. It's not necessarily so bad for black, but it sort of feels a little bit friendly, doesn't it? Dragon also played bishop b5 as well, which was quite interesting. And after a6, we take on c6, bc, and go b4. Queen b8 castles, queen e5, c4, which I thought was a very interesting idea. Black's hitting some pawns and grabbing one, but now white's still got some nice pressure on there. Definitely worth investigating. Knight f3 is the other idea, and then bishop g4, castles, knight g6. So black's done what we said. He's moved the bishop, this time to g4, and then move the knight to g6. And now white starts hitting the centre with c4. Yeah, again, quite sharp lines. This was Stockfish against Dragon, actually, but it sort of ended up, being vaguely equal in the end. What else have we got? c3 has been quite a common a human move there, and after knight c6 you go castles. You're offering that pawn on e5. You could start doing stuff like f4 and g4 afterwards if black took it. So we got this line a few times. Takes knight c6. So the knight on d4 has been removed, so this knight can move here. But okay, I mean, Dragon, for example, was playing f4, bishop g6, g4, which was pretty interesting. F takes g4, f5, takes, queen h4, knight c3, queen e2. It was agreed a draw here. It's probably balanced, but yeah, not easy. Stockfish played knight c3 and then went f4 and then went g4. Again, quite interesting positions to play there. And even if they're supposed to be fine for black, if the engines can hold them quite convincingly, I think there's definitely challenges for black there. But okay, castles was played by Nikita, and then knight bc6. That was an obvious move for us. And now I guess we got maybe a little bit lucky because veteran grandmaster Joe Gallagher came around. I don't think this is really a line that he played, and he just played it on sight really, and he played the move f4, which is a move in this position, but not really a very successful one. I mean, basically you've got to start playing sharply here with white. And there's two ideas. There's bishop b5, which is Stockfish's first reaction, the one it expects. And then you've got a6 takes, and then c4. Very well-known theoretical line, which basically has been more or less worked out to equality. But yeah, if you can't remember it, it's can be quite dangerous. And c4 is another line. And if d takes c4, then queen a4 was actually a game of Hans Niemann against Alexandra Goryachkina in Title Tuesday, so blitz game. In actual fact, instead of d takes c4, takes and d takes c4 is what the engines want. With the idea being that bishop c4, we go a6 and then knight c6, and we're just doing very nicely here for black, really. Slight space advantage for white, but there's plenty of squares, available for black's pieces. Black's going to be fine in this position. But yeah, bishop b5 probably the most challenging. C4 maybe a bit less, but after f4, actually the engine's already dipping a tiny bit below 0.00, so they already like black, and we were very happy. Knight takes d4. So queen takes d4, played by the next GM. I'm not quite sure who it was. Bishop takes d4 actually played much more in human games, but something like knight c6, and then maybe bishop f2, g5. This is what the engines want, and it's just going pretty well for black. I mean, you're already undermining this e5 pawn. No problems for black at all here. Lots of lines, but nothing too bad. So queen d4 played, and then we played knight c6. And here, this was where the GM players sort of played a very natural move, but the engines really don't like it very much. Maybe overstating a bit, but they really wanted the move queen a4 here, which just to make sure that black doesn't get the plan that he wanted in the game, and we can look for something like rook d1 and c4 just to try and break up that centre. That was definitely the best move for white. After queen d2, actually we played a move that the engines don't think is fantastic. It's a novelty, but from my point of view, this is just a very, very good move. It was actually Felix McPeak, the shogi player, who suggested the move, and I have to say, until this time I was sort of a little bit not really paying much attention. But when he suggested d4, suddenly I started getting into the game. It looked very, very interesting, and it's a good aggressive move to play. I mean, d4, you attack the bishop, and you're also stopping this knight from getting out to c3, so it's setting some problems. It's a novelty. Actually, h5 was played in the game Klinova against Maka in the European Women's Championship in 2003 in Istanbul. And rook c8 was what Stockfish wanted. It's pretty good what Stockfish wanted. I'll just show you castles, bishop g1 and g5 there. Not bad. We like that too. But d4 is pretty cool. Bishop f2 and then bishop c5. Stockfish prefers bishop e7, but I like bishop c5. Feels nice and aggressive, and you're getting ready to play moves like, for example, f6 and bring the queen out to f6. Pretty good basically. Rook d1. So I think this is really where the GM's kind of we're going a little bit off at this stage. I think Shreyas had a few moves around this stage, but I think probably the most important thing that the engines point out is that you should be going bishop d3. You should be trying to swap off that light squared bishop, which is cutting across the queen side quite nastily. And if black does something like queen b6, then you go knight a3. This was something that I'd spotted in quite a few lines. And obviously if you take on b2, well, I can either go knight b5 or knight c4. Just a little bit irritating attacking that one. And if you go bishop a3, ba, takes, then white's going to be all right. You'll line up on this pawn, maybe get an f5 at some stage. White will be sort of okay, but breaking the activity of that bishop is quite important. But somehow the GMs, just playing kind of disconnected moves, they didn't really get to grips with this very well. So rook d1 was played, queen e7, and now bishop went to f3. Again, bishop d3, important move there, but bishop f3 was played, and so we castled in this position, and now the move a3 was played, and yeah, this didn't look right, when it was played. But I wasn't quite sure really what white should do. Actually, the engines are saying want the move c3, and I just assumed that this would be, just excellent for black, just because you're opening up the centre, and all of my pieces are brilliantly placed here to jump into any squares that you free. But after rook a d8, I just want to play the move queen e1. Bishop c2, rook d2, and just sort of wait like that. And yeah, I don't know. This was the best that the engines came up with, really, which is just all right for white. No problems for black at all, but yeah, nothing special at all. So that was quite decent. a3 was played, and we played rook a d8 on automatic pilot there. The engines actually want f6. Actually, they almost didn't really want queen e7. They wanted to castle and play f6 quickly. Yeah, I was kind of I had another idea in mind, I have to say, so which I was trying to convince my my fellow table companions to go for. So yeah, but rook a d8, I think we all agreed on that. That felt like a good one, and yeah, you're starting to think that d3 might be dangerous. Although during the game I didn't find anything good, and actually the engines say it's not dangerous at all. But yeah, b4 was played, and bishop b6, and yeah, now the engines are starting to get a little bit worried about stuff. They wanted king h1. Actually, just to get out of any possible discoveries like this, and that would have been a very useful move. But the GMs came up with queen c1. The idea being that you want to play knight d2 into e4 or c4, and that seemed like a pretty reasonable move to me at the time. So yeah, I was looking at d3, but somehow it didn't quite seem to. Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't sure. It looked quite good, but I also wasn't 100% convinced about it. Actually, in all fairness, if I'd seen what the move that the engines want, which is rook a2 as the way of defending, I might well have wanted to play this. But they seem to think that this is kind of defendable. Just the white king is not as bad as it looks, and yeah, you've got plenty of activity there. But yeah, just for a moment, it just looks absolutely disgusting. I would have been looking to play a move like f6 now or something, just to break stuff open. But yeah. Not supposed to be that good. Raymond Keane here actually suggested the move rook d7, which is it's amazing somehow. He's in his mid-70s now, and doesn't play chess very much, but it's amazing how your character seems to remain with you, because yeah, this seemed like very much in character. His idea was to play rook c8. It's not really sort of very dynamic somehow, but it's trying to increase pressure by putting pieces on good squares, and that's very much the way that he always used to play. So it was quite strange to see this. Whereas I, on the other hand, was absolutely convinced that g5 was the move, and yeah, there was a bit of skepticism on the table about that one, but there we are. I really wanted it, so it was played. It's not the best move, actually. f6 again would be the best way to do this, and start pointing the bishop towards the king's side, and and then we're really going to be we're going to be in serious business there. But g5. So Matthias Bartel came around again and said, this is your move. I recognise it from the Frenches you play. And indeed that is true. I always try and play g5 in the French. So he was a little bit shocked at what had happened to his opening position. This wasn't quite what he'd had in mind when he played the first 6 or 7 moves. But he came up with a good move, played the move knight d2. So the idea is that if we take on f4, then something like knight c4, or yeah, most likely knight c4, and followed by queen takes f4 afterwards. And if you don't do anything, then you're just going to play knight e4, knight c4. But we had an idea for that. Again, d3 was something that we looked at, but again, just felt that it was just leading to exchanges again. So, but f6 seemed like the way to do it. So we're just trying to blast everything open and claiming that the white pieces as they are here, queen on c1, rook a1. Passive, and we're so active that that this will be really strong. I mean, in actual fact, seems like as almost always you can say, I overestimated the power of the black position. I really thought that this would be clearly better for black, and it's apparently not the case. But yeah, it is quite tricky for white to play. So e takes f6. I was actually more expecting knight takes c4, and there's a lovely little line from the engines here, which is g takes f4, knight takes b6, and then f takes e5. Knight c4 and e4, which is pretty interesting. It has to be said. The engines think actually that it's leading to a draw after this absolutely crazy line. Rook takes g2, king h1, takes, b takes c6, and well, black's got all sorts of stuff here. Even wants to give it a second go with e4 and all that stuff. So would have been a pretty crazy game. Wouldn't put it past myself to find something like this, but yeah, I hadn't really got that far. I was still looking at g takes f4 when the gems came around. But they played e takes f6, pretty sensible move, queen f6, and f takes g5. And here actually we reach a point where this was some input from me where I just said, yeah, this is absolutely the best move. We have to play it. And the engines are just not at all impressed. I didn't want to play queen g5 because of knight e4, and well, white's just getting sort of free with gain of tempo. I mean, also even knight c4 would be quite reasonable here, just again offering the exchange of queens and looking to get rid of this dangerous bishop. But I was so convinced that queen g6 was a really nice move. You're stopping the knight coming into e4, you're threatening bishop takes c2, and you've also got ideas of knight e5, also conceivably e5 to e4, though that would be difficult to get in. So, and you do notice this about human players, that you sort of see a move that's multi-purpose, and you see lots of ideas, and you get very, very enthusiastic about it, but you don't always realise that the opponent's got a reply that's also multi-purpose. And if I thought just a little bit, then would have realised that rook e1 is actually a very good multi-purpose reply. It stops knight e5. It kind of negates bishop takes c2 because the rook's no longer attacked, and it's also threatening knight e4. So that would have been completely fine for black. For white rather. Well, I mean, it's still quite sharp, but it would have been in principle quite decent for white. What the engines wanted was to play the move queen g7, and this is again kind of interesting because the engines are just so good at working out what the important threat is, and the important point is that you want to have the queen protecting this square, so that if you go rook e1, then we go knight e5. Knight e5 is the move you really have to play. I mean, it's heading towards all sorts of things. When the knight gets to e5, the danger increases enormously on white's position. So it's still actually defendable for white, of course. But yeah, I was quite struck at the difference between the way that I, as a human player, but you see it quite a lot, got carried away. Well, I see it a lot in my games. I can think of a few games that I've played in the past. We get carried away by a multi-purpose move and just miss a multi-purpose reply, actually. But h4 was played. I can't remember by who, actually, but it was by quite a strong player, actually, I think. So just defending g5, and I mean it's kind of I mean it's not a bad move, right? I mean you want to play rook e1 and then knight e4, but I think it's quite typical of disconnected play that you don't you sort of see the position, you say, well, okay, I'll protect that pawn, I'll get in later, but you don't realise how crucial it is because well, after knight e5, we really thought at the table, we really thought this was strong, and actually, the engines say that this is completely winning for black. I mean, actually, we've even got moves like rook c8, Raymond Keane's idea to to hit c2 again. So very, very strong indeed. And it was made even worse after the next move, which was bishop takes b7. yeah, you want to stop the knight from getting the bishop. I mean, if you play something like takes and bishop e4, that is going to be very dangerous. But allowing the knight into g4 without any threats is even worse. I vaguely was thinking of bishop c2 because you're threatening rook takes f2 or something like this. But knight g4 just looked so simple. It looked worth it, and white's completely lost now. So bishop g3 was played, d3 with check, king h1, and now not the engine's choice, but this was Felix. Felix shouted this one out, and this was definitely a move that appealed to me an awful lot. It could also just take on c2, but bishop f2 was lovely. Just getting rid of this bishop, and obviously takes. We've got knight takes, and there's another key advantage to this because knight f1 was played, and then queen h5, and the idea is we're going to get rid of this bishop, and we're going to come in with queen h4 check. So I mean the engine's already giving back loads and loads of material, and just they know they're completely lost. But there was only really one human move in this. This was queen f4. And now, actually, I do believe that Felix was very keen on bishop e4, and actually that was the very best move. It's minus 33 for black. Somehow, I'm not quite sure why. I think I sort of said, I think rook d4 is even stronger, and that's only minus 7. So I do apologise, Felix. Bishop e4 was much stronger. The idea being, that after bishop e4, if you go something like queen e4, then I just take on g3, and then we're going to have queen h4 and queen h2 mate. Yeah, I can't think why I didn't want to play that move, because it's a very nice move. But anyway, rook d4 has very similar ideas. We're just going to chase the queen away, and then come round to h4. With queen c7, I think we even were looking at playing the move rook d7. I think that was our intention. And if queen d7, we go bishop g3, and then we're going to go queen h4 and queen h2, and just going to be curtains. So that was pretty nice. Queen f3 was the other move. Then we can also go bishop e4. Some reason I seem to think that bishop e4 was only possible after rook d4, but queen f2 was played, I think by Shreyas, and we took, and rook takes h4. I think that Matthew Sadler came around here as well and said, well, where's my queen? Where's my queen? Couldn't believe what had happened to his position. So, there's no point in being fancy. Let's just break up the king side and then take on c2. And after rook f1, we played the move bishop d3. And the grandmasters resigned. Obviously it's just huge for black. And if you take on f8, I just take back with the king. And I'll take here, and I'll just go c1 queen, and there's not very much that you can do about it. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed that game. I've got a pretty good record on my tables, I have to say. I've annotated quite a number of these games on my blog on matthewsadler.me.uk. From previous years, but I think this is the first year I've done a video about it. But yeah, I said always a very fun event, lovely way to round off the tournament, and lovely to see all the British chess players again. Saw a number of players I hadn't seen in quite a while: Julian Hodgson, Darshan Kumaran, English grandmaster from junior from my generation, Joe Gallagher as well, and a few others as well. So really nice to see that. Also nice to celebrate a victory by Michael Adams, at the age of 52, winning a top flight tournament as well, ahead of many very young players. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that. Merry Christmas. Hope you're having a wonderful time, and Happy New Year as well. And hopefully in the new year we'll be having lots and lots of fresh videos. Thanks very much for watching. Thank you.